Event marketing can take on many different forms. It's an exceptional way to connect with your target audience, deliver unique experiences, build value, establish thought leadership, or just get rid of a lot of branded pens. When does it make sense to sponsor an industry event versus creating your own? Are we even thinking about event marketing the right way? Marketing and sales are full of myths, misconceptions, and even flat-out lies. Join us as we exchange the echo chamber for a sponsorship booth and talk a little event marketing.
Hello, and welcome to the Rethink Marketing Podcast. I'm Nick Smith, joined by the energetic envoy of entertaining and effective events, Mr. Marketing, Colin Jeffries.
Nick, thank you for the rousing introduction. How are you this morning?
I'm doing fantastic. Hey, it's Thanksgiving over here. We got some guests over. It's going to be a good time, and I'm excited to talk about events.
Absolutely. Likewise.
Good stuff.
So today, to jump in a little bit, we're going to do a two-part series. Part one, talking about sponsoring other people's events, participating, really being there and not having to worry about the logistics and the planning and lining up speakers and sponsors and all of that stuff, but really showing up with a plan. I think that's one of the most important steps, is not relying on the day of winging it, but really going in, knowing who you want to talk to, maybe getting some of those meetings or dinners or lunches set up in advance, and then having a plan when you leave. In my mind, events are just the beginning of what can be a very valuable and fruitful relationship for a lot of minimum qualified leads, or maybe even people that are further down the funnel. Nick, what are you thinking we'll rethink today?
Yeah, I like that you said minimum qualified leads, because something that I have seen at so many of these events is you go there and you visit somebody's booth to get your branded pair of socks.
Which, by the way, are very hot this year.
I collect them all. I love the swag. But you get that, and then you're automatically considered an MQL for these companies. And so you just get endless phone calls from their sales team. And so I think there's a right way for companies to engage with people at the booth and then follow up with them, and there's a wrong way. And so I'm really excited to dig into that a bit more.
Absolutely. Well, let's get started with the right way. Again, not to echo everything I just said, but it starts with having a plan, recognizing who are the speakers, who are the other attendees, who are the sponsors, and how do they fit into your ecosystem. I think that's really baseline. What's next?
Yeah, I love the idea of having a plan. And everything you mentioned about knowing who the right people are. Something I like to do when I'm attending an event, I try and look up all of those different attendees, all those different sponsors ahead of time, and how can I reach out to them before the event with something really relevant, something really engaging, and maybe even pre-organize a meeting or a conversation so that when we're at the event, instead of that being the very first time that we interact, they're a little bit more familiar with me. Maybe we can grab a little one-to-one time. I can, hang out at their booth and invite them to come join something with me, like a lunch, or I can go to one of their events. And it's a lot better, I think, if you do that research ahead of time. Sometimes that's really difficult to do when you have so many different attendees, and it could be a bit overwhelming, but I found that to be a really great approach. We're actually in the middle of this right now. I'm getting ready to go attend the AWS reInvent Summit in Vegas, and I've just been using that to book as many meetings as possible. So events to me they're gold for sales.
Absolutely. I think as long as you go in recognizing what you want out of it, right? If we go in blind and we don't have any success metrics, then it can be a little bit challenging for us to say, hey, did I maximize my time? But if you recognize and you're proactive, which is exactly what you were talking about, Nick, then I think we can really, really bring value from events. And the interesting thing here is you can attend an event and get a lot of value out of it without necessarily having to sponsor. Sponsoring obviously has its place. It's a great way to meet a lot of people that are in the industry, that are relevant to you, that might be good contacts. But usually a good plan is, if you're planning to sponsor, have several attendees as well, because the nice thing about being an attendee is you can select and be very choosy with who you take meetings with who you network with, and so on. There's a lot more agility. Unfortunately, a lot of events, when you sponsor, you're kind of glued to a table for 8 to 12 hours at a time. And it can be a lot more difficult to get in front of the speakers, to get in front of the presenters, or to get in front of even the other sponsors. But there's a lot of value that can come from sponsoring, and a lot of value that can come from attending.
I totally agree with you on this, Colin. And it's funny that you say that, because I've done both booth duty and being able to just wander around. And maybe I'm biased here as a sales guy, but as a sales guy, I really prefer just being able to walk around, because half the people who come up to the booth really aren't necessarily looking for a pitch right away. Not that you should ever just pitch people as your first step in any conversation. But when you're walking around, it's amazing how you can sort of just start a genuine conversation, ask like, hey, I saw your booth, really cool. Love those branded socks that you're handing out. Tell me a little bit more. Pretty soon you're in a one-to-one conversation, and you can find a natural way of leading into, hey, while we're here, who at your company handles this? And the reason I'm asking is because of XYZ. And people are very open to that. And so it works out really, really well.
That's a great point. I think the flip side of going in with a plan is leaving with a plan as well. It's a real bummer, Nick, if you make those good connections, if you have really valuable conversations, and that's it. I look at the event as kickoff, if that makes sense, right? You spend a lot of time planning for the game, so to speak. The event is kickoff, and then you have 4 quarters, let's say, of the game to actually play after the event. And I've seen so many people with home shows, with trade shows, with various types of events and symposia and what have you, where they come in, they make really good connections, they leave, and they write the event off as being a total loss. Maybe the event was really perfect. There were acquisition targets there. There were investment targets there. There were, you name it. But if there's no plan of action afterward, then of course the event's not going to fulfill.
Oh, absolutely. I got to say something about this. This is something I've done the last couple of events. People underestimate the power of social media at events too, and even after the event, right? So if you go to an event, you can go and look for posts on LinkedIn or look for posts on Twitter about the event, other people who attended, people you didn't even have the chance to meet. And just comment on their post and say, hey, I love this post. I was at this event too. This is what I got out of it. Really sorry we didn't get a chance to shake hands. Hey, do you want to set up a time to chat?
That's
right?
A great point.
And you can get so much more out of the event by engaging afterwards on social media. And then absolutely too, the follow-up side of events is huge. If you had an actual face-to-face interaction with someone, I personally think it's okay to pick up the phone and call them, right? You've already chatted, right? Maybe you haven't had that face-to-face, but if you stopped by their booth and you got their name from somebody else, send them a text, send them an email, send them a whatever, and try and reach out and say, hey, I was looking for you. I was at booth number 152, and Jerry told me that you're the person to talk to. There's so many great things you can do. You can enroll them in a drip campaign if they visited your booth and they express some interest. There's lots of different things, but having that plan, knowing where they are in that awareness journey, knowing what your goal is, all of that's really important.
100%. The other thing I'll say is a lot of folks go to events, and I was guilty of this early in my career. I would go to events and I would try to make as many connections as possible. And then I would filter through who were the quote unquote valuable connections and who were the people that were just there to get pens or socks or chip clips or what have you. But really what makes a lot of sense when you are at an event, or when I'm at an event, is to focus on maybe creating 10 to 20 really good relationships, relevant people that make sense for you, instead of making 100 connections where 95 of them actually don't make sense. That's what I found has worked really well. Going in with intentionality, exiting and having intentionality. But while I'm there, really making sure that, hey, there are 10 people that I want to get in front of, or there are 15 people that I want to get in front of, and here's why, and here's what I'm hoping to get out of those conversations. Again, recognizing that's just the beginning. A lot of this is coming back to intentionality. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm always a fan of going deeper. Something I will push back on a little bit. Maybe it makes sense to go deeper if that's your goal. If you're, bigger contract sizes, if you have I'm kind of approaching this from that sales mentality of you're going to an event hoping to drive revenue, right? But maybe it's an awareness play. And if it is an awareness play and you have something that's maybe more of like a commodity or something like that, maybe the breadth approach, not going super deep, that might make sense. I've seen some pretty cool companies go out there and just have really great swag game. I think a great example of this, there's this company that was putting out branded Patagonia, like those vests, right? And so they had I mean, that's nice swag, right? But they had their logo on this and they were just passing this out to everybody and not really having deep conversations, but everybody at the event is wearing these vests, whether they work for that company or not, because it's a really nice piece of swag. And so now everybody at this event is looking at that logo and saying, what the heck? Like, who are these guys? I'm going to Google them, right? And so something like that can actually drive a lot of attention, a lot of eyeballs to you. So I don't know. I think there's different approaches, different ways to skin that cat.
That's a great point. A lot of it does come down to what's the objective. So if you are a brand where it makes a lot of sense for you to try to fill up your CRM, to build new contacts, etc., then absolutely a breadth play might make a lot of sense. But if you are an individual trying to build your sales pipeline, trying to take an investment, meeting with acquisition targets, etc., I mean, events can cover a whole swath of objectives. But then, yes, it probably makes sense to be a little bit more intentional and specific. Let's not underestimate the power of swag, though, to your point.
Everybody loves some good swag. In fact, I've seen something that people do on the social media side is a lot of people will do a swag challenge, right? And they'll say, this is actually something we're going to do at WorkSpan. Alexis Scott is one of our awesome social media people, and she's going to go to this event and actually do like a swag competition. She's going to go to everybody's booth, see who has the best swag. We're going to involve people, let them vote. And it's a great way of driving engagement. It's a great way of getting those other brands invested in the outcome, because, hey, they put a lot of time and effort into putting that swag together. And you can bet that they're going to be excited about trying to win this competition. But they're also probably going to be like, okay, who the heck is Alexis? Who the heck is WorkSpan? Why are they doing this? And they might look that up too. And so I think there's a lot of really cool things that you can do with swag.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a great way to get your logo out there. And I'll say, I've been to events where I take a pair of socks that has a logo emblazoned on them. And then every morning when I'm picking my socks out, whose logo am I seeing? And it's just a continual touch point to get in front of me, which is an excellent way of spending a couple of bucks, getting something that people will use, and then they take it home and they use it. Now, I will say a lot of swag has become commoditized. Things like pens, notebooks, even bags at some level, especially the drawstring bags or the die cast bags or the die cut bags, I guess. Probably a little bit more commoditized, maybe viewed almost as disposable even. But when you're talking about socks, or I've even seen people giving out Bluetooth headphones with their logo on them, there are a lot of opportunities to get in front of people daily with things that they're actually using long term. But giving a bunch of swag out, especially expensive swag, is not a one-size-fits-all solution. So, Nick, any precautionary tales of things to watch out for when giving swag away to event attendees?
Yeah, I like what you were saying about the commodities, right? The stuff that everybody else is doing, the stress balls, the pens, stuff that people probably are going to use one time and throw away or give away. Probably not going to drive a ton of traction for you. I have a good example of something that has made a big impact with me. There was this company that their logo is a lizard, right? And so they actually had stuffed lizards that they were giving out with their brand on it. And I've got a 5-year-old daughter. And so, of course, I'm going to get my daughter a little stuffed lizard. And she goes to sleep with this thing every single night. So I'm reading her a bedtime story and I'm thinking about this brand and how awesome they are that they gave this out. And so something like that, not everybody else is going to do. And it really differentiates them as a brand, and a pen is not going to have that same level of impact.
100%. Well, great conversation today talking about planning before events, having intentionality during events, and then obviously having a great plan after events, some hits and some misses with swag. Anything else you would add before we park this car?
Great question, Colin. I love this topic. I think there's so much more to cover. And so I'm really excited about next week as we plan our own events as opposed to attending other people's events. So tune in for that, and we're going to have a lot of great material to cover.
I used to believe a lot of myths that hinder marketing.
And I bought into the classic misconceptions haunting sales.
Join us as we escape the echo chamber each week to shed some light on how to interpret sales and marketing advice.
Can't wait until next week for another episode? Visit rethinkmarketingpodcast.com to listen to our archives, connect with us, or request your very own limited edition Rethink Marketing t-shirt.
Until next time, keep rethinking those common assumptions.